All right, strap yourselves in for this deep dive because we're heading straight to the Indian Ocean.
Ooh, sounds exotic.
It is. You listeners sent in the new Mauritian government's 5-year plan, the whole PDF.
Wow, ambitious.
It is. And gotta say, it's a lot to unpack. So we're going to distill it down, give you those key insights. No need to wade through all those pages yourself.
Sounds like a plan. Where do we even begin with something this massive?
Well, the themes that really jumped out, at least to me, were rebuilding trust in their democracy, transforming the economy, and then they got some pretty big social reforms in there, too.
Yeah, whole lot of change happening.
Yeah, big time. So let's start with that democracy reboot. The new president actually called the last decade a dark period.
Ooh, that sets the tone, huh?
It does. Makes you realize this program, it's as much about addressing what went wrong before as it is about, their hopes for the future.
Right, you see that in how much they emphasize restoring public trust, really shoring up those independent institutions.
And to do that, they're setting up this Constitutional Review Commission. What's fascinating is just how much power this thing could have. Electoral reform is on the table. They might even go with an electoral college system to elect the president.
Wow, big changes. One thing that really got me thinking was that they might include rights of nature right in the Constitution.
Rights of nature.
Yeah, it's a growing global movement. But Mauritius would be one of the very few countries to actually give legal rights to nature. Ecosystems, rivers, imagine what that would do for environmental policy.
That's huge.
It is.
Okay, but before we go full eco-warrior, there was another election thing that I thought was really interesting. They're getting rid of the, what was it called? Mandatory community affiliation?
Ah, yeah, that's a big deal.
It is, right.
Yeah, because it means they're moving away from a system that often just reinforced ethnic divisions. By taking that out, they're saying, hey, we want unity. We want a democracy where it's about your ideas, not your background.
It's a good look. Okay, so moving from reboot to what feels like a full-on system upgrade, their economic plan.
Hit me with it.
This is where we get that catchy phrase, from small island to large ocean state.
I love that.
Right. So clearly they're thinking bigger than just tourism.
Yeah, lots of island nations have trouble diversifying, but Mauritius is really going all in on its massive, exclusive economic zone. And they're not just talking fishing rights here, we're talking research, developing whole industries based on the ocean, even specialized training to create a whole new workforce.
So less beaches and cocktails, more like, I don't know, underwater labs, high-tech fish farms.
Exactly. They're laying the groundwork for an ocean-based economy that could honestly change the game.
All right, so give me specifics. What are these poles de croissance, these growth poles they keep mentioning? What's actually going in the water?
Well, think deep-sea mining,
Okay.
sustainable energy from ocean currents,
Interesting.
even something called bioprospecting, basically searching for new medicines and materials from marine organisms.
That's fascinating. So while the rest of the world is fighting over land, Mauritius is looking at this vast, mostly untapped potential of the ocean.
Exactly. And, as land gets more scarce and with climate change getting worse, this kind of approach, it could become a model for others. Other islands, even coastal countries, could learn a lot from what they're doing.
Okay, I'm getting the feeling this is bigger than just another government program. This is like Mauritius saying, here's where we stand in the world.
Totally.
But before we get too swept up in the future underwater, let's get back to basics. What about food? People gotta eat. Does their plan even address something like food security?
Oh, absolutely. They have a whole program dedicated to it.
I do.
Yeah, and it's not just about growing enough food. They want to be self-sufficient, which is a big deal when you're an island that relies on imports for so much.
Right, makes sense. But they're taking a 21st century approach to it, right? I saw something about land mapping and food traceability. Tell me they're not just like dumping fertilizer and hoping for the best.
Not at all. They're using tech to optimize farming, better yields.
Yeah.
They even want a system where you can trace your food all the way back to where it was grown.
Ooh, so farm to table, but with a digital upgrade.
Exactly.
Okay, color me impressed. So they're making farming more high-tech, Andy, more transparent. But wait, there was another tech thing that sounded straight out of sci-fi. Intelligent Island. I mean, come on, what is that?
Yeah, that one's all about massive digital transformation. Think e-government services that actually work. Online voting, even a mobile ID system.
Okay, hold on. Instead of just saying we're going digital, can you give me an example? How would this mobile ID even work? And what about security? Are they thinking about that?
So imagine a secure digital ID. It's right on your phone, and you can use it for any government service, voting, even signing contracts, all with top-notch security. And yeah, cybersecurity is a big focus. They're building a really robust digital infrastructure.
So they're not just throwing out buzzwords, they're thinking about how it all works in practice. I'm starting to see why you called this a blueprint for a whole new Mauritius. It's not just tweaking policies, it's like reimagining their whole society.
Exactly. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to dive into, especially when it comes to their social reforms, which are just as ambitious.
Okay, so before we went to whatever you call it, a break, I guess, we were talking about all this high-tech stuff, ocean industries, digital IDs.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. But what really sets this apart, I think, is that they're not just focused on the tech. There's a real emphasis on social well-being, too. They're not just trying to create a rich country. They want it to be fair and just, too.
Right, so it's not just about becoming some Silicon Island. They're thinking about opportunity for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so break it down for me. What kind of social reforms are we talking about here? What are they actually proposing?
Well, it's a pretty wide range, really. They want to tackle poverty, reduce income inequality. There's a big focus on supporting families, making sure everyone has access to good health care and education. They even talk about dealing with stray dogs, which might seem kind of random.
Hold on, stray dogs. I'm picturing like robot dog catchers now.
No, not quite that high tech. But think about it. Stray animals can be a health hazard. They can, impact tourism. And it kind of shows that a society isn't taking care of things.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess those little details can say a lot about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's zoom back in on some of those bigger social programs. You mentioned poverty and families. What are they actually going to do about those?
Well, they want to make sure that organizations that already exist, like the National Empowerment Foundation and the National Social Integration Foundation, that those are really working well. They help a lot of vulnerable people. So it sounds like they're going to review them, maybe even revamp them a bit.
So it's not just about throwing money at the problem. They're actually making sure their solutions are working.
Exactly. And there's talk of new programs, too, things specifically for at-risk youth, support for single parents, even like incentives to help everyone have a better work-life balance.
Work-life balance, huh? That's not something you usually see in these government plans. Usually it's all work harder, produce more.
I know, right? But it shows that they get it. They're recognizing that people need time to rest and recharge, too. If people are happy and healthy, they'll be more productive in the long run.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got poverty, families. What about education? How are they planning to shake things up there?
One word: inclusion. They want an education system that works for everyone, no matter who you are or what your background is. They want to see fewer kids dropping out, more ways for people to succeed, whether it's through academics or, vocational training.
I remember seeing a quote where they talked about creating an education system with a human face. That sounds nice and all, but what does it actually mean in practice?
I think it means moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach. Kids learn in different ways, they have different goals, and they should have different paths to success.
So less rote memorization, less standardized testing, more focus on like developing the whole person.
Exactly. And they're putting a lot of emphasis on those skills you don't always learn in a textbook.
Hmm.
Problem solving, communication, working as part of a team.
Those are pretty crucial no matter what you end up doing.
Right. It's about giving kids the tools to succeed in the real world.
Awesome. All right, so we've covered poverty, families, education. That brings us to healthcare, which is always a big one. How are they planning to tackle that?
Well, they want to modernize hospitals, give people better access to specialized care, and really invest in preventative medicine. And like we saw with that Intelligent Island thing, they want to use technology to make healthcare better, too.
So telehealth appointments, electronic medical records, all that. But what about the bigger picture? Are they doing anything to make healthcare more affordable? What about quality of care?
They are. They're actually going to review how healthcare is funded so it's more affordable for everyone. Yeah. And they want to set up a national health regulatory authority, basically to make sure everyone's getting the best possible care.
So it sounds like they're really covering all the bases. But one thing that caught my eye was that public inquiry they're doing, looking into how things were handled in the past, especially during COVID.
Yeah, that's a big deal. It shows that they're serious about transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
They want to figure out what worked and what didn't so they can build a better system for the future.
It also shows that they're not afraid to, admit when things haven't gone perfectly.
Right. And it's not just about looking back. They're also looking ahead to new challenges. Mental health is a big focus for them.
Oh, that's great to hear. It's something that often gets overlooked.
I know, but they're talking about increasing funding for mental health programs, training more professionals, even launching campaigns to, reduce the stigma around mental health issues.
That's fantastic. So they're really trying to create a more holistic approach to healthcare, taking care of the whole person, not just the physical stuff.
Exactly.
What about access to specialized care? What if someone needs treatment that's not available in Mauritius?
They thought of that. They want to make it easier for people who need to get treatment abroad so everyone can get the best possible care.
Wow, that's impressive. They're not just thinking about what happens within their borders, they're thinking about the needs of their citizens globally.
Yep. And they're also being proactive about the specific health issues. Like they're going to set up a diabetes center in every regional hospital.
Interesting. So, whether we're talking about education, healthcare, or social welfare, it seems like they're not just reacting to problems, they're anticipating them. They're already thinking about solutions.
I think that's a really important takeaway.
Yeah.
They're not just trying to fix what's broken, they're trying to build a system that's ready for the future.
It's a pretty ambitious vision. But you know what? After looking at all this, I actually think they might pull it off.
I think so too. There's a real sense of determination.
Yeah.
They've really thought this through. They've got the big picture and the details, and they're ready to get to work.
Well, listener, we've covered a lot of ground here, from stray dogs to diabetes centers. It's been quite a journey. But don't worry, we're going to take a quick breather, gather our thoughts, and then we'll be back to wrap up this deep dive with some final takeaways and maybe even some predictions for the future. And we're back. Okay, so we've talked about almost everything in this plan, but one thing I always get curious about is how are they going to make all this stuff actually happen?
That's a great question because a plan is only as good as its execution, right?
Exactly. And I know they've got a section in here about modernizing the public sector, which I'll admit doesn't sound super exciting.
Not the sexiest topic, I know.
But it's important, right? Because a slow, inefficient bureaucracy, that can really mess things up. So how are they going to streamline things, make it actually work?
They're talking about a total overhaul, making things more efficient, more transparent, more accountable. In fact, they're even planning on introducing a whole public sector reforms bill. So it sounds like they're serious about making real changes, not just talking about it.
Okay, but changing the culture of a whole sector, that's tough. What makes them think they can actually pull this off?
Well, one thing they're doing is giving more power to the ombudsman, which
Mm.
basically means that if people have a problem, they have someone to go to. It's about making the government more responsive to the needs of its citizens.
So it's not just about making the bureaucracy work better, it's about making sure it's working for the people. I like that.
Exactly. They're aiming for a system that's both effective and equitable, which is not easy, but definitely worth striving for.
All right, so we've got a revamped public sector, hopefully running smoothly. But what about the physical stuff? Roads, bridges, ports. You need that infrastructure to support a modern economy.
Oh yeah, they're not forgetting about that. They have big plans to modernize their transportation system, focusing on efficiency and sustainability.
Okay, give me the good stuff. What are we talking about? High-speed rail? Are they going to build a hyperloop?
Well, maybe not quite that futuristic. But they do want to expand and upgrade their public transportation, make it more reliable, easier to use, and get this, they're actually thinking about making it free for everyone.
Whoa, free public transportation, that's a huge move. But free can't be, actually free. How are they going to pay for that?
It's part of this bigger shift towards a more sustainable and inclusive transportation system. They're looking at things like congestion pricing, investing in electric buses, and trying to get people to, walk and bike more. Basically, create a system that works for everyone, not just people who can afford a car.
That's ambitious. I like it, especially for an island nation where space is limited and traffic can be a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not just focused on land transportation either. They want to upgrade their seaport and airport, which makes sense. Those are vital for trade and tourism. They even want to improve connections to Rodrigues, so all parts of the country are well connected.
So they're thinking about the whole archipelago, not just the main island. But with all this building and upgrading, what about the environment? They're really pushing the whole ocean economy thing, so they must be thinking about sustainability, right?
Definitely. And remember that rights of nature concept we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That could have a huge impact on how they approach these infrastructure projects.
Oh, right. So it's not just about building for the sake of building. It's about making sure those projects are actually good for the environment in the long run.
Exactly. And to make sure they're thinking long term, They're putting together a 20-year master plan for land transport. That way they can prioritize projects, use resources wisely, and make sure their investments are actually sustainable.
Okay, now that is thinking ahead. It's not just about fixing what's broken today, it's about creating a system that's ready for whatever comes next.
Absolutely. And they're not just focused on the big picture either. They're also addressing things like road safety. They're putting in a new graduated licensing system, working on making roads safer.
It's good to hear they're paying attention to those smaller things too, because at the end of the day, those are the things that impact people's lives every single day.
It shows that they're not just focused on grand visions. They're focused on making their country a better place to actually live in.
And honestly, I think that's what this whole plan is about. It's not just about economic growth or new technology, it's about creating a Mauritius that works for everyone, a place that's prosperous, fair, and sustainable.
I couldn't agree more. It's a bold vision, and there will be challenges for sure, but they've done their research, they're thinking long-term, and they're looking at the whole picture. I think they have a real chance to make this happen.
Yeah, they just might pull it off. Well, listener, that's about all we have time for today. We've covered a lot of ground from the bottom of the ocean to the roads and bridges, I guess. But now it's your turn to keep exploring.
This plan, it's a roadmap, but the real journey is just beginning. So, what did you find most interesting? What questions do you still have? Keep thinking, keep digging, and most importantly, keep asking those big questions.
And we'll catch you on our next deep dive.